All right, good afternoon, everybody. A little bit louder, please. Thank you. This is a pitch session. We need energy. Welcome. See, the entrepreneurs have it. To the Climate Solutions Technology Showcase. What we are going to do over the next 2 hours in this double session is to hear from 9 extraordinary climate solutions entrepreneurs who are going to share their technologies for what they want to do and how they think we can impact climate with amazing early stage organizations. And so the lineup includes folks from all over the country and some from outside of the country. They have been curated to be very distinct in the different solutions that they have. So some are software, some are physical, some are about energy, some are about Seawalls. And so you're going to be treated to what I hope are a really extraordinary set of presentations. All of these entrepreneurs are actively raising money. They can't say that because our SEC makes that illegal, oddly enough, but I can, so I just did. They will not be able to share deal terms publicly because that's what the SEC says you can't do. But happily, we have an amazing reception planned just outside on the terrace at 4:30 when we're done. So if you are excited by what you hear today, you will get a chance to speak to the entrepreneurs. So they got 12 minutes each to explore their technology, their solution with you. And they are excited. I am excited. Thank you for being here. And let's start it off with Miami's own Anya Freeman.
Hi, everybody. My name is Anya Freeman, and I am one of the co-founders of Living Seawalls by Kind Designs, and I'm here to present to you a revolution in seawall technology. As you know, one of the greatest challenges facing the city is rising sea levels. We are already seeing more intense and frequent storms, a lot of insurance losses, and soon we will have daily flooding. Eventually, there'll be mass migration from coastal communities like Miami and major property and infrastructure loss. By 2100, we can all be underwater. So, yeah, yay! There's good news coming, I promise. So the way that the government and public entities have addressed rising sea levels primarily is through the construction of these very exciting conventional seawalls that you see all over town. And there has been no innovation in seawall construction in decades, basically since like concrete was invented. One of the biggest challenges is that these seawalls are also very expensive. In Miami, it's like $2,000 to $3,000 per linear foot. They're very slow to construct and to permit. It can take up to 2 years to permit a seawall project. They have a very short life cycle, 30 to 40 years, and they have a negative impact on the environment. After you install a conventional seawall, within 1 year, 45% of the biodiversity leaves and the quality of water goes down. Because of that, contractors have to mitigate. So basically, the city and the state requires mitigation or an offset of the damage they're doing through environmental mitigation, and that costs 20% of a seawall project. So we looked at this problem through a totally different lens, not as a construction company, but as a technology company. And we employed the technology of 3D printing. And what that enabled us to do is to have freedom of design. So as you can see, the panel is not flat. It has this amazing multiple habitats. So at the bottom, there's a crustacean cave for lobsters and crabs. Above that, there's a coral zone that's underwater, an oyster zone between high and low tides, and at the very top, it will be a green wall using mangroves. It's also modular and expandable, like Lego pieces. So when you install this seawall, as the sea levels rise, you can remove the cap, add an extension, and put the cap back on. And the cap is not flat, like you saw in the previous slide. It has like a C shape, so it actually deflects wave energy. This would not have been possible with molds, but with 3D printing, that's something we can do. And it has built-in sensors, so it tracks essential water quality data, like pH levels, toxins, microplastics, algae, and we are making this with no rebar. And not only does it have all these benefits, we can also do it cheaper and faster than a conventional seawall. So, yay! So that is the most important slide. This was a GIF. It was really cute. I was printing the wall, but it's okay. You can imagine it. So it has incredible economic and environmental benefits. And to us, the economic part is extremely important. To have a scalable solution to address this challenge, we have to have the economics first. And the environmental is the bonus. So because we don't have to mitigate, our panels are self-mitigating. We're automatically saving 20% on every seawall project. It's much faster to manufacture. And something that's very exciting is there's a huge cut in the permitting process. So a permit can take up to 2 years, but 90% of that time is spent on all the back and forth with the environmental mitigation. Since we don't have to do the mitigation, we cut 90% of the permitting time, which is awesome. And a seawall lasts much longer because we don't use rebar. Rebar is like these metal poles you see in construction zones, and underwater they expand and they pop the concrete. Without rebar, concrete lasts forever. Like Romans built things with concrete that's still around. So our seawall panels can last, because they have no rebar, can last over 100 years. And we're there doing that through a special pattern that we can do with a 3D printer inside the panel, like a geometric corrugated pattern. And then the environmental bonus is that the seawall functions as a coral reef. It hosts sea lives, improves the quality of water. It captures carbon. Each panel is like a tree. It captures 40 pounds of carbon a year. And it has a small footprint because we also don't use piles, but we'll be using soil nails. And the market is huge. Like Miami is an amazing place to be. It's where we're based. And it's the first city to really face this challenge at scale. But there are 507 cities worldwide at risk from rising sea levels. And conventional seawalls are just cost prohibitive. They're planning to just migrate entire communities. So we really need an economic solution. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers published a report saying that they will spend $416 billion in the U.S. alone in the next 20 years on seawalls, $76 billion just in Florida. And also, just to mention, this is definitely an essential purchase. So no matter how well or not well the economy is doing, the sea levels are going to keep rising, and we need to keep purchasing seawalls. So it's a recession-proof. And just to break down the market, so 416 total addressable market, 50,000 miles of seawalls in 20 years, that's $22 million panels. If we sell them at $5,000 per panel and we capture 20% of the market in the US, which we believe we can purely just on the economics, it's just cheaper, faster, and it's better, that's a $22 billion revenue potential. And our traction so far with them, we just started in 2020, but we've had amazing traction. Thanks a lot to the community here. We've done great site visits, built an amazing team that we'll introduce you to, and advisors. We've been prototyping and testing our prototypes. We've done amazing accelerators and incubators, including Seaworthy locally and Endeavor. And in May, we launched our fundraising campaign. Okay, this is the most exciting slide, our roadmap. In August, we begin the Heritage Fund. It's an accelerator for hard tech startups that are in the construction market and material science market, and they have a huge team of PhDs, 13 weeks in-house. They do all the testing for you, help you apply for IP, R&D, and they will be helping us with a pilot project. And the pilot projects, we are planning to do 2 here in Miami. We're in conversation with Key Biscayne and downtown Miami. And very excitingly is that we will be doing a pilot in Necker Island with Richard Branson, which is cool because Richard Branson is a big champion of blue tech, but also he owns an island, which is convenient because there is no building codes. So we can really experiment and prove this concept. And finally, in January 24, we begin to mass produce our panels, and it's B2B. So we sell these panels to contractors. They do the installation, and they do the permitting on their own. And as far as competition, it's a weird slide to me because this has actually never been done before. This is the first time that anyone will 3D print seawalls in the world, which is exciting because there's no brand at all. So we're really going to be the first brand in seawalls, which is great. The closest thing I found is like 3D printed tiles. These are kind of like ecological tiles they do in Australia. They attach them to existing seawalls. So they're not like weight bearing, it's an add-on. And when seawalls are already so expensive, it's a hard sell to make people get the tiles just to improve the environment. This is our gorgeous team. You see me and my co-founder, James, is in the front. We also have Patrick Shearer in the house. So they're all here to support. And we just really have a great team of experts in their field in concrete, great material scientists, 3D printing, and of course, environmental and structural engineering. And we're very, very proud of our board of advisors. As I said, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is in charge of all the seawalls in the United States, and we have a general on our board, General C. David Turner. We also have SoftBank. Javier Villamizar is very involved in the community here. We have Dr. Pranoy, who's a super expert in concrete, and we have Tim Blankenship, whose firm gets hired most recently by a community like Key Biscayne to set the standards for all seawalls going forward. So it's great to be included in that report as a potential technology. And finally, I just want to end with this. This is just to show you what's going on in the construction tech market. So this company, Icon, many of you, I'm sure they know, they're based in Austin. They were just launched in 2017, and they focus exclusively on 3D printing concrete houses. And their first seed round was $9 million in 2018. They raised $35 million in 2020, and they just finished a raise $207 million, and their valuation is $2 billion. So we are planning to follow a similar trajectory. It's a really exciting place to be. And if you are interested, if you know anyone else that's interested in doing something amazing, like actually doing something awesome for this community and for coastal communities worldwide, we would love to talk to you at the reception. Thank you.
All right, give it up one more time for Anya. I realized I was so excited to get started that I didn't tell you who I was. I'm Randall Kempner, and I am a senior advisor to the Energy and Environment Program at the Aspen Institute, and think about stuff related to climate smart money, including cool entrepreneurs, including Stefan, who is here to talk about an entirely different industry. You probably never really thought you would come to one of these and look at an oil well, but you're going to look at oil wells in a different way. Stefan.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hi. Love it. And as Randall mentioned, we're definitely shifting gears a little bit. I want to start this out with a question. So could oil and gas's largest liability become renewable energy's greatest asset? So next I'd like to tell you guys a little story. It's a story about Jack, and Jack is an oil well. Jack began his life back in 1938, and when his life began, he immediately started providing oil to the people of the world, which was an incredibly valuable resource. And when he did, it changed the way mankind existed. All of a sudden, we could go to places that previously we could only dream about. We could visit distant family members, we could heat our homes in the winter, maybe even put out fires before our houses burned down, which is definitely not a joking matter, but that is a horse-drawn fire truck, and I personally think it's pretty terrifying. So Jack is not alone. Another opportunity for imagination here. Usually this is a video riding across an oil field. There's a lot of oil wells. You can imagine it. It's pretty cool. But Jack is certainly not alone. He lives in a field with a bunch of his friends, more than 100 of them in that field, and there's thousands of fields just like this. And as I said, they're providing an incredible resource for a long time, but most of them have stopped producing. And as we enter a phase where we now understand some of the repercussions of the oil and gas we've been consuming, this speed at which these wells are going inactive is only expected to increase. And we're left with a situation where we have a lot of wells that are left sort of abandoned by society, doing nothing unless they're polluting, which many of them are. So what should happen at the end of an oil well's life? In reality, it is required by state law to clean up every well that a well owner has. And what that looks like is you remove all the surface equipment, you take out the tubing from inside the well, put a bunch of cement in, rip off the wellhead, tear out some casing from the surface, and remediate it back to what it was. Really, there's two aspects to this that are really important. Part one is that it's extremely expensive, and part two is there's no return on this investment. So what that means is it's a world where these oil and gas companies are not incentivized to do it, and they don't want to, and they're pretty good at avoiding it, to be honest. And so it's created a situation where we now have more than 2 million inactive oil and gas wells across North America. As I said, many polluting, and if they're, at best, they're doing nothing at all, and about 1 million more that are on the cusp of becoming inactive. Each well is expensive, but when you multiply that out by millions, it's a crazy amount of money that needs to go into this problem, daunting even for governments, and we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars. And the time that regulations today allow for us to complete it is more than 100 years. I promise this does get a little happier soon. But with that, unfortunately, we don't have this kind of time. They're leaking methane. Methane is a massively potent greenhouse gas, so we need to change something soon. So what we want to do is we want to change this narrative, create a new story in which instead of being viewed as liabilities, these inactive wells are viewed as a resource. So I'm Stefan Streckfus. We are Renewal Energy, and we are creating oil wells that end well. And so how we're going to do this is we sought out to find a market that we could pair with this resource. We identified gravity energy storage, and we think it's the absolute perfect complement. And here's why. First off, gravity energy storage is exploding as a market, mainly because it's an incredibly flexible energy storage resource. And so what this allows us is to take the energy that is produced when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing to times when we want to consume it, and the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining. And so within that space, Energy Vault is the most developed company. They recently SPAC'd for about $2 billion, and we essentially do the same thing they do, but instead of above the ground, we do it underneath. And so what makes these wells a particularly interesting resource is the way that they play into the physics of this situation. So for gravity energy storage, you need three things. You need mass, you need gravity, and you need height. And height is where these wells really excel. So the average gravity energy storage company either creates, or accesses somewhere between 100 and 500 feet of vertical displacement. The average oil well is over 1 mile deep. And so what that means is that every kilogram we suspend is massively valuable, pun intended. And on top of that, you also, when you multiply this by millions of wells, you've got a huge energy storage resource capable of powering the United States for 2 weeks. And the way that we do this, I'm going to start at the bottom of the slide to confuse you guys and keep you on your toes. But first we go in, we clean up the well, we seal it with cement. And this is really important because this is the remediation service we provide. We also monitor it to make sure that if anything goes wrong, we're able to fix it quickly. And then once we do that, we're building a long cylindrical weight within the well. In order to store energy, we lift that weight to the top of the well, essentially converting electricity into potential energy. And we store it until the sun goes down and people want to turn on their ovens or whatever the grid needs in that particular location. And then we lower that weight. And that turns a generator on surface, putting electricity back on the grid. So what effect does this have in these markets? Well, you can think of it this way. Really, we've created one technology that plays in 2 different markets at the same time. So we're effectively subsidizing our entry into both markets with our entry in the other market. And if that's confusing, what it means is that on the energy storage side, we're by far the lowest cost energy storage available. And on the well remediation side, we're much cheaper than it has ever been in the past to clean up a well. So it's important, though, that there are also a couple of other benefits that this creates. On the energy storage side, I mentioned that we seal the well whenever we install, and there's a lot of methane leaking out of these wells. So that allows us to be the only directly net negative greenhouse gas emissions energy storage technology on the market, which is really important as we seek to deploy a lot of energy storage to support the deployments of wind and solar that are coming in our near future. Now on the plug and abandonment side, not only are we the lowest cost, but because we're putting in gravity energy storage, we also create a revenue stream that wasn't there before. And so all of a sudden, we can share some of that revenue with the well owner and create a payback on something that never had any return before. And so finally, it's a world where oil and gas companies are incentivized to clean up their wells. So this is our fearless CEO, Kemp, and he is giving you guys a little tour. We've built one of these things. This is our first prototype / pilot. She is was out in a field in Sanger, Texas. Had a great test out there for a couple of months. We've just uninstalled her for a couple of upgrades. And I'm saying her because she actually has a name. We call her Artemis Prime. We're a team of engineers, so we had to do something lame at some point. But on the screen, you can see there are 2 winches. One of them is not operating. That's just because this originally was a testing station, because we wanted to play with this thing a lot before we stuck it in a well and suspended a weight and took any risk. Now, Artemis Prime stuck as a name because we thought it was funny and we like it. But it also is functional in that what you were seeing there actually all folds up into a contraption that's sort of like the car form of transformers can go onto the back of a trailer. And we can then ship it across the country and install in different wells, work with different customers to make sure we're meeting their needs. So Era Energy is where we're headed in a couple of months for our second pilot installation, and that one will be in California. Getting into market size, I don't want to spend a ton of time here. But I will just say skip to the far right and the serviceable, obtainable market. Once we've filtered out all the wells that don't make sense because they're not the right geometry or they're too far from an energy storage market or maybe there's no electrical infrastructure in that particular location, we still end up with a more than $4 billion per year market we're accessing just on the energy storage side. And next piece here, so the economics are definitely what makes a business run. But the reason that we really think this is going to be successful is that this idea unites a lot of disparate communities. So whether it's an oil and gas company or a utility or environmental activists or renewable energy project developers, this is a technology that everybody benefits from. And one really important aspect here is that we actually impact a variety of disadvantaged communities, whether it's the people where we're installing the device who have had local pollution coming out of these wells previously, or if it's the blue-collar workforce in oil and gas that, as we transition to a renewable energy economy, need a new job. We help a lot of different groups. And just in case there are some potential investors in the crowd, digging a little deeper into the revenue potential here, as I mentioned, $4 billion, that is currently in active wells, only the viable wells of those inactive wells. If we want to think a little bit larger and shift over to the wells that are currently active and the wells that are currently being drilled, all of which will become inactive at some day, we end up with about $10 billion per year. And if you're really a dreamer, which we definitely are, the rest of the world should be included, and that comes out to about $15 billion per year in energy storage revenue. And with that, I would like to invite any of you actually, there should be one more. All right, well, I'll do it without the slide. We've got a really beautiful team that you guys can't see, but I promise exists, that we've been super fortunate to find and gather together over the last couple of years. And with that, we've also, a couple months ago, learned that we were granted $3 million to develop this concept by ARPA-E. Over the next few years, we'll be working with Renewell to do that. But at the end of the day, we do want to move faster. And because of that, we'd love to chat with any potential investors or partners or collaborators that may be in the audience and invite you guys to join us on our mission to convert oil and gas's largest liability into renewable energy's greatest asset. Thank you, guys.
One more round of applause for Stefan, please. I see there's some folks standing in the back. Now would be a good time to come in if you'd like to get a seat. There's some stuff on this third and fourth row over here if you want to. You don't have to, but we want to make you comfortable. We're going to go from underground to the sun and to above ground, and we're also going to take a trip south. So les presento a mi amigo José Luis Opazo de Santiago de Chile to talk about his company Ciudad Luz.
Thank you very much, Randall. Muchas gracias. It's an honor to be here. It's a great opportunity. My name is José Luis Opazo, José Opazo. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Ciudad Luz. And I'm going to talk a bit about what we are doing. So I've always been passionate about renewable energy and human ingenuity to transform the power of earth and the sun into prosperity. But now we live in turbulent times. And the ongoing energy transition is called to tackle the biggest, the greatest challenge we face as humanity, which is climate change. I've been lucky enough to work with rural communities in Chile, other countries in Latin America, also some countries in Africa, developing renewable energy projects. Then I saw the emergence of distributed solar as a clean, affordable, viable source of electricity. Solar electricity will account for nearly half of all electricity generated by 2050. But more importantly, distributed solar sources will be roughly half of that. Sorry. So we decided with my partners some 7 years ago to transform that huge potential into an opportunity and to transform solar energy in the most available source of electricity for all. So what's the reason that a very efficient and even mature technology is not in every single home, in every school, in every industry facility? I'll give you an example. A rooftop solar installation in Latin America costs around $2,000 to $5,000. A family could recover the investment in less than 5 years. It will provide them with clean energy, cheap energy, and it will save CO2 emissions to the atmosphere. It will run for more than 20 years. But as we see those benefits in the future, we also face the needs of today. We need to send our kids to school. We need to pay for their health. Or we may want to go on holiday to sunny Miami, maybe. But we need to transform the way we live. We need to rebuild our society to achieve zero carbon emissions by 2050. And we need to do it now. We need to mobilize people like you and me to do the right investments now, because the window of opportunity is really small. And we decided to do that, to make that at Ciudad Luz. We founded Ciudad Luz 7 years ago. We are the top solar distributed energy company in Chile and are expanding into Latin America. But we are not merely solar panel installers. What we do is that we transform a hardware into a service, and we call it solar as a service. And we do design the right financial models or architectures that adapt to every different market segment: homes, industries, schools, and so on. And to do so, we need our own technology. Cloud Solar is our platform. It's the key enabler of energy service management at a very distributed level. Because the future has a surname, we heard Anya about the 3D printing, but the energy future is also 3D. It will be decarbonized, decentralized, and highly digitalized. And we transform that in our value proposition to our customers. So we provide them with their own energy without any investment, which is clean energy that produces no CO2 emissions, which is cheaper than the dirty electricity from the grid, and makes our customers independent with safe energy. And this is with no fine prints. So with my colleagues, my team, and my co-founders, we have a very clear and single purpose: to transform solar energy in the most accessible, competitive, and affordable source of electricity for all types of communities and organizations in Latin America. But this is not new. It started in Europe 20 years ago, came to the US in the middle of the credit crunch, then went to Australia, where markets are mature. But this market is just starting in Latin America. As example, in Chile, less than 1% of electricity generated comes from solar panels at the distribute level. But it's going to change. it's projected, forecasted, that nearly half of all new solar investment will be at the distribution level in the next 20 years in Chile. And it will be so in the rest countries of the region. And it will be driven by the next wave of energy innovation, which is storage, with the reduction of cost and the ability to provide solar energy not only when the sun it's on, but also during nights. So let's see what we have done. We started 6-7 years ago. We started in Chile, then moved to Colombia. We have installed nearly 50 megawatts of projects that represent the 20% market share in both countries, and we are now ready to install the next 50 megawatts in Chile, Colombia, and starting to explore other countries. But the key element of our market model, business model, is the way we finance projects. So we designed a financial model for commercial and industrial installations. We have implemented over the last 3 years. It's fully operational. It has invested more than $15 million and is now investing the next $30 million. But we wanted to pass from commercial and industrial installation to the residential sector. So last year, we developed a new financial model for homes, which is already prototyped and tested, and is ready for full deployment from this year on. And we've created a private fund, which is already with $15 million of investment commitment. We have grown, and we have gone through 3 different capital rounds. We have raised around $1.5 million from private investors, and we have also been supported by the innovation grants from governments. And we are a healthy, financially healthy company now with revenue sales of around $2 million and growing at the rate of 50% a year. When we started, we set a roadmap. And we are now entering the second phase of solar distributed energy. And we will continue consolidating and expanding into new markets and new industry segments in Latin America. We're starting projects in Paraguay, storage. We are developing projects in agricultural facilities in Peru, and looking for other markets in Central America and expanding into Chile and Colombia as well. And we will scale up residential solar finance in those key markets in the region. But to do so, we need to develop new energy services based, obviously, on PV, but also on storage and digital intelligence. So we will increase our market share in those markets. We will increase our ability to get into this market, but more importantly, we will develop our digital tools. So we will grow from what we have installed now up until around 400 megawatts in the next 10 years, representing a growth of 20 times. We will face challenge. We need to develop the centralized energy solutions based on those digital asset management abilities. We will provide independence based on those energy storage solutions at multiple scale and places. And we will need to empower our customers to actively participate in the new energy markets that are emerging in the future. So cloud solar is the key resource for construct this future energy system. We will go, as the degree of digitalization grow and distribution electricity markets get more complex due to the penetration of distributed energy resources, we will be able to start developing new services from what we do now up until the management of storage assets, virtual power plants, and even peer-to-peer trading in the future, which will altogether create more value for the company and our customers and all our stakeholders. So let me end, tell you who we are. So now we are a company of more than 50 people working in Chile and Colombia. We have more than 6 years of commercial operation with a very multidisciplinary team, people with a lot of ability in energy, technology, finance, project management, and so on. And we have been supported by key stakeholders in the region, particularly people coming from the energy sector. And we will continue expanding in these new markets. And we have organized the company to create these different investment vehicles and subsidiaries in different countries. So Ciudad Luz is at the center, and we are partnered with many other institutions to provide the investment, the financial capital for all those financial models. And these are my co-founders, now my friends and partners with a great potential, with whom we share this purpose of transforming solar energy in the most affordable, clean, and available source of electricity for all in the region. So just join us in building this new solar generation. Thank you very much. Thanks.
All right, muchas gracias, caballero. We are going from the southern cone to the northern border to a place where they understand cold, and Peter Evans in CryoLogistics. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm from Canada. It does get cold there, but unlike the myth, it's not as bad as everyone thinks. However, we've been living in November since November. When I left to come down here, it was only 40 degrees. I'm the founder and CEO of CryoLogistics, a Canadian clean technology company that is developing a solution to a worldwide problem that generates a lot of waste and unnecessary costs. Imagine for a moment that you're the producer of a high-value, temperature-sensitive product that needs to be shipped across the country or across the ocean, knowing that the mechanism for doing that consists of multiple facilities, handling facilities, trucks, planes, cars, automobiles, and in some countries, your product is actually going to be shipped on a bicycle or on the back of a donkey. This is known as the cold chain, and as you can see, it's a very complicated network of people and things that are required to move your product through the supply chain to its final destination. It's a very complex, expensive, and inefficient operation, but it is what we rely on today to receive our food, our pharmaceuticals, our vaccines, all the things that we depend on for life today. The inefficiency I talked about has one outcome, and that is waste. There's a tremendous amount of waste produced in the cold chain because of the multiple touch points that your product has to go through before it reaches the consumer. About 35% of all consumable food product produced in the world never reaches the table. And in some countries, and in Canada, believe it or not, that number is 58%. 58% in a first world country. Hard to believe. The International Air Transport Association estimates that about $34 billion worth of vaccine every year goes into the dumpster. As you know, vaccine is very temperature sensitive. We all have learned that. And again, the mechanism for moving that product through the supply chain is deeply flawed. All of that waste also contributes to global greenhouse gas emissions, as does the transportation sector. We intend to solve that. My team of engineers and I have developed what we call the snow ship solution. This is a vacuum insulated pallet container that allows you to put your product in a secure environment and ship it across the supply chain, no matter how far it has to go, maintaining the exact temperature set point required by your product to within half a degree. Now, the best that we can hope for in the current model is about 3 to 5 degrees. Well, a vaccine cannot survive in an environment where the temperature fluctuation is 3 to 5 degrees. We're the only game in town at this point, and we're excited by the opportunity to actually solve the problem once and for all. This is a carbon dioxide reuse technology, meaning that we use liquid CO2 that is recovered from waste gas, and using our proprietary heat exchange mechanism, and this is really where the genie in the bottle rests, is we can control the phase change characteristics of liquid CO2 from a liquid state to a gas state to a solid state, known as dry ice, as you know, in the form of dry ice snow inside a sealed heat exchanger that is positioned within the load space of the snow ship. And as I said, we can control temperatures from ambient to as low as minus 35 Celsius and hold those temperatures to within half a degree. One of our goals is to create value from waste. We know how much CO2 is being produced by industry, and where is it all going? It's going into the atmosphere. It's not all bad, however. CO2 is used in many manufacturing manufacturing and production, pardon me. We also need it to breathe, right? So it's in use today in a variety of industries, and we are simply capturing it for natural refrigeration. It is unsurpassed as a natural refrigerant. We've had an independent study conducted of our technology, and it found that the snow ship on a per pallet basis will reduce emissions in the transportation sector by up to 35%, 37% on a per pallet basis. Now, one of those trucks that you see on the road with that reefer unit mounted on the front can carry up to 24 pallets. So think of 24 of our units in there at 22 to 37% emission reductions per unit. Pardon me, I'm going ahead of myself here. Our technology addresses 9 of the United Nations Sustainability Goals. We've had this study, and as I say, it's been verified. So we're very excited by that. The market for our technology is global. Think about food, pharmaceuticals, vaccines. Cannabis has now become a commodity that is being shipped in temperature control units. These are all regulated, high-value products that are perishable. They are time-sensitive with complicated handling requirements. Again, think about the cold chain. And they are being moved through a mechanism that is underserved and ripe for disruption. In North America, the market opportunity for our technology is about $1.5 billion. And the rest of the world is a total of about $12 to $15 billion. So we are in the commercialization phase now. We are working with companies in Canada to actually pilot the technology. And in so doing, we're able to understand what the pain points in the cold chain industry are. And we are seeing all of these impacting the efficiency, the operation, the profitability of these companies. One very large food service company that we're working with, a North American company, is telling us that they cannot grow. And as you know, if you don't grow in business, you die. This organization is working with us to develop the technology to fit into their operation in a way that will allow them to reduce their dependence on what they term as industrial athletes. These are large men who can lift heavy loads repetitively and work in a cold environment in a terminal warehouse at night. And they're having a very difficult time with labor shortages. They're also striving to increase their gender diversity and reduce their fleet of 350 refrigerated trucks to 0 using our technology. That company represents upwards of $250 million in business opportunity for our company. It's one of the top 5 food service companies in North America, which together represent a very significant opportunity. They operate on a herd mentality. Where one goes, others follow. So we're working with this company to introduce the technology in the United States this year. Our path to market is to address the pain points within the cold chain as they apply to those industry verticals that I talked about earlier: food, healthcare, surface logistics, cold storage, and air cargo. I mentioned the revenue potential for North America and Europe. We're in an equity round currently. We've raised to date $8.9 million in non-dilutive funding and equity. We have the support of the federal government. They have provided $5.3 million worth of non-dilutive funding, R&D grant funding. We continue to get more money from governments at all levels. And I'm here today to talk to you, well, to invite you to approach me later. I'm the guy in the blue shirt, blue for cold, on the terrace to discuss an opportunity for investment. Thank you very much.
All right, last one for this block, then we'll get you a break. But Ryan Davidson's going to come up here and talk about a pretty cool new way to generate energy that I'm going to guess none of you have seen before because it's not really being done yet. So Ryan, take us home.
Thank you, Randall. All right, thank you all for being here. I'm Ryan, and CalWave is working to unlock the power of the ocean. So 60% of our power generation in the US still comes from fossil fuels, and around the world, that figure is even higher. We have to get, as we all know, that number as close to zero as possible, as quickly as possible, for us to have any chance at keeping global warming to even 2 degrees Celsius. So as Jigar Shah says, we need to deploy renewable capacity as fast as we can. And what we need to, let's see. Right now, curtailment rates for solar and wind are both on the rise, and our greenhouse, or our oil and gas infrastructure needs to be replaced by baseload renewable resources. And this is where wave power comes in. It's more consistent, it's more predictable, and it's much more dense than both wind and solar. So while the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, the ocean always makes waves. So the DOE has predicted that waves can power 30% of US power demand. And given the significant populations along each coast, wave power is already close to demand centers. So a key word to think about when thinking about wave power, as I've mentioned, is baseload. On a day-to-day basis, the capacity factor on average for wave power never drops as low as for solar or for wind. On an annual basis, wave power actually peaks in the winter, while with wind, it depends on where you are, and with solar, it always peaks in the summer. At the same time, wave energy and offshore wind can share a significant portion of their infrastructure, so we can actually increase the power output and flatten the power production profile of offshore sites without significantly increasing costs. But let's step back in time a few decades for now. In the 80s, there really was no dominant design for wind turbines until the 3-blade horizontal axis wind turbine emerged as the dominant design for a few reasons. It's the most efficient, it has effective shutdown capabilities, and it's scalable. In 1990, the average wind turbine was rated around 200 kilowatts. Now, we're looking at 15 megawatts apiece, good for a 75x increase with the same basic design. With wave power, we still have yet to find that universally accepted solution. However, waves and wind have a similar fundamental challenge in that a majority of the energy actually comes in the relatively lower energetic regions. So with waves, we're talking 1 to 5 meter wave heights. However, wave developers have to prepare for massive storms. So a 50-year return storm creates waves on average 16 meters tall. And in order to prepare for those conditions, they have to significantly over-design the technology, which just makes it uneconomical. So as I just mentioned, there have traditionally been surface-going buoys and then wave energy converters on the seafloor. And those both present huge challenges. On the surface, you have to significantly over-design it to the point where it's not cost-effective. When these devices operate on the seafloor, That's far less efficient because you're farther from the waves themselves, and maintenance is more difficult, also making it cost prohibitive. So in 2015, the DOE launched the Wave Energy Prize. 92 teams applied, and CalWave was one of them, and went through 4 design iterations throughout the competition. And at the end, we were one of 9 teams to be invited to test at US Navy facilities. And out of this competition, out of these 4 design iterations, CalWave had a revolutionary new architecture. And it actually takes the best of both worlds from the surface buoys and the seafloor devices. So it operates actually directly under the waves, but completely submerged. And this actually allows the technology to generate more power than if it were on top of the surface, and it allows the technology to generate power from multiple degrees of freedom instead of just moving in one direction. However, it can also shut itself down during harsh conditions. So in a way, it can protect itself just like those seafloor going devices. And it actually does this autonomously. So because of these great features, CalWave was a winner of the Wave Energy Prize, and since then, the technology has gotten even more efficient. And given it's gotten even more efficient, and given our ability to shut down effectively and autonomously during harsh conditions, we predict that CalWave will be the cheapest producer of wave power on the market. Coming out of the Wave Energy Prize in 2017 and 2019, CalWave secured farther funding from the DOE to expand the system. On the left here, you see the drivetrain in development actually taking hints from the wind turbine industry itself and the elevator industry of all things. On the right, you see the fabrication of the hull itself, which eventually became what we're piloting offshore San Diego right now in conjunction with the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. So we deployed this device in mid-September of last year. So as of this coming Monday, it will have been an 8-month deployment. So it's actually the longest deployment of a wave energy technology in the history of the United States. It's located about a half-mile offshore, and what's exciting is it is connected back to the Scripps Institution, actually exporting real power. And what's really significant is we've achieved all of our objectives with this pilot. The installation was efficient, only taking an hour and a half. It's been operating autonomously for over 6 months now, since early November. The system has been operating with 99.8% uptime, no decline in performance, only having to shut down during a couple of major storms. So right now we're a team of 7 strong with an experienced board of advisors and numerous partners like NREL, multiple other national labs, UC Berkeley, many others. So CalWave spun out of the UC Berkeley Mechanical Lab, and as I mentioned, secured funding from the Department of Energy and from seed investors, breakout labs in 15, 17, among others. And this January, we were awarded a farther $8 million from the Department of Energy to expand our system to 100 kilowatts. And this is the system that we'll be testing at the PacWave test site in Oregon soon after it opens in late 2023, early 2024. PacWave is actually, it's located in Oregon, offshore Central Oregon, is connected back to the utility scale electrical grid, so we will be able to export real significant power to be used by us. And in addition to our 100 kilowatt system, we will actually deploy farther devices there in the future that are even larger, and those will be the backbone of wave farms, much like the offshore wind farms that we see today. And something else that we'll be able to prove out at the PacWave site is that CalWave's installations can be done with relatively simple boats as opposed to in the offshore wind industry when they need very specialized vehicles and even helicopters. So CalWave has 3 product lines, and we're starting this year with the X node. With the onboard battery, we can provide continuous power to offshore applications such as autonomous underwater vehicle charging, offshore aquaculture farms, anything that needs power on site that doesn't have to be exported back to shore. The business model here is power and data as a service, so we'll own and operate these assets. Beyond the X node is the X100, rated at 100 kilowatts, and this is what we will be deploying at CalWave. It'll be commercialized in 2024, and it will provide power to remote coastal microgrids that, at this time, those communities pay multiple times more just for basic energy needs than we do. And as I mentioned earlier, how wind turbines are scalable, so is our technology. Roughly double the length and the width of the X100, and you get the X800 rated at 800 kilowatts. And this is going to be what ties in with those offshore wind farms to, like I said, increase the power output of those offshore sites while also flattening out the power production profile of those sites because waves are more consistent. So we've identified several entry markets for CalWave, both in the US and around the world. These are all easily billion-dollar markets. Even assuming a modest penetration of wave power into the power generation portfolio, you're looking at an annual $35 billion opportunity in the US and an annual $300 billion opportunity around the world. So we've developed a strong pipeline of LOIs, initially focused on the Americas and the Pacific, and then considering our wider pipeline of both the X node and the X100, we're looking at all 6 inhabited continents. So why now? The Department of Energy is really stepping up their commitment, committing $110 million every year for ocean energy R&D in particular. The CalWave test site will be operational in late 2023, and CalWave is signed up to test there first. The offshore wind industry is booming and growing like crazy, and wave energy infrastructure will tie in there, and CalWave is ready to do that. But most importantly, in order to decarbonize, we need baseload renewables, and that's what wave energy can provide. That's what CalWave can provide. So we are in active talks with the investment community. Excited to meet you all, and please visit us at calwave.energy, and please join us in unlocking the power of the ocean. Thank you.